Hey everyone, it's Types, and today I'm going to be making a tier list about all the decks in the current standard format, or all the ones that are relevant. Here's a list of all the decks. I'm using Trainer Hill. It's a very solid tier list maker, possibly the best. It's very clear what decks they are. They're labeled. It's awesome. And yeah, this is kind of based on. I can make a title. Let's go. Yeah, so this is about it's loosely related to the World Championship, but it's just like the standard format, right, which we're currently in. So it's actually kind of weird because a new set comes out on the day of the World Championship, I think. But you can't play it, so it doesn't matter too much. It's the current format, which is Battle Styles through Paldea Evolved, or Shining Fates through Paldea Evolved, however you want to look at it. And so, yeah, I wanted to make a tier list. I know some other YouTubers made tier lists, but in case you didn't know, some YouTubers lie on their tier list on purpose to trick people if they're like playing in the World Championship, so that all their like opponents like aren't expecting certain decks. I don't know if that's still going on that. I know that used to happen. I don't know if it happens anymore, but I know it's possible. And I'm not like playing the World Championships because I'm not made of cash. So, yeah, I figured I'd make a tier list of my own to show off something that's a bit more objective. I haven't played all of these decks, or at least not all these decks in the current format. Like, these are like the most played decks based on something. But yeah, so it's SABCD, apparently. I can't change this, which is a bit annoying, but it looks nice in the tier maker, so that's good. Miraidon, Regieleki. So I'll say S is like very solid shot of like winning tournaments, like major tournaments, including the World Championship. A certainly could win. Is good. It's not like the best deck, I wouldn't say, but A is good. B is okay, certainly playable, but not amazing. C is like it's definitely substantially below 50% win rate generally, and it like will struggle. D is like don't play this. Yeah, so I'll just start with Miraidon Regieleki here. This deck is probably C tier. It's not very good. It notoriously has a really low win rate. It's a really good ladder deck. It's fast, but like you really struggle to take 6 prizes. You can take the first 4 with relative ease. Certainly the first 2 easily. The next 2 you will get eventually, but then the last 2 are very difficult most of the time. Next to Rotom. I mean, I wouldn't play Rotom. Rotom V and V Star, where you like do tool. It's I described it as tool drop, I guess. You have tools in the discard, you send them to the Lost Zone. It's not like the worst deck in the world, but on this list it might be the worst deck. It's like inconsistent, which is problematic. Next we have Meowscarada. Meowscarada is also C tier. It's there's like a directly better deck than it, which we'll talk about later. I'm trying to look at the way the decks are written. Yeah, okay. So Meowscarada, it's like you can play. It's a fun deck, but it's really inconsistent. But it can do some solid stuff, but it's not great. Dialga with I don't even know what this is. This Dialga deck, because there's Dialga Magnezone. So, but this isn't Dialga Magnezone. I think this might be Dialga with like other ways, including Lost Zone or however else you want to play it. But I wouldn't really ever recommend playing it without Magnezone, which is really inconsistent. It's probably the worst deck on this list. It's like Dialga with Magnezone is inconsistent, but it can like kind of do stuff. Dialga without Magnezone is just like never gonna work, because especially now you don't have Metal Saucer. Regidraco Box is also bad. There's some ways of making it where it kind of works, but you really need to play it with like Fortress, like Leafeon and Gardenias, and those are all pretty inconsistent. So I think it's going to just go so badly so quickly, and you have no other backup plan, and you just lose a lot of the time. Oh, by the way, we're going from like worst to best generally. Least played to most played, I believe. Then we have Rapid Strike Urshifu. Rapid Strike Urshifu is it's like a solid deck. Well, actually, how is this played though? I don't know. It's like in a part of a box deck. I'm not exactly sure what is covered by this. Because there's the Urshifu and Teleon deck, which is like the main way, but this is like a more Urshifu focused deck. It's okay. Its typing is okay now. There are a number of very solid Psychic decks, though it's possibly the best type in the game. So I'd say it's like a C tier. I'd say it's the best deck we've seen so far, but it's not great. A straight Miraidon. This is Miraidon with, let's see there. Miraidon Flap is another. Oh, this is the weird Miraidon Regieleki glitch. Okay, for some reason it shows up twice. This happened before. I don't know. There's some like weird glitch with it where it just shows up twice for seemingly no reason. But yeah, so there's Miraidon Flaffy as well, I believe. Yeah, but this is Miraidon with it's just like a Turbo Miraidon build. But it's already a turbo deck. This really has like not a lot of substance, but it's fast. I'd say it's probably D. It's bad. It's not that much like worse than the regular Maraudon Regieleki. They're very similar decks, but again, not great. Lunatone Solrock is again bad. I wouldn't really play this deck. It struggles against Lost Zone really badly, and it just not a great deck, especially without Scoop and Net. Regis are really bad right now as well. I'll say they're not as bad as Delga, but they're still bad. Actually, no, I'll say C. I think I'll say like top of C actually. Like that's a decently big change, but like they're not a great deck. They have some potential, but you don't have that toolbox aspect you used to have because you don't have Aura Energy. You have Luminous Energy, which is okay, but not as good. Substantially worse. So Regis aren't as much a toolbox deck, but some of the attackers are pretty solid. You can do like maybe 3 of the attackers and get away with that. Next up, Calyrex Palkia. I don't know anyone who plays this deck. Not gonna lie. Like I know people used to play it. This is I tried a Calyrex with Palkia V-Star, but I don't know. It's weird. Like I just don't think it's a very good deck. Its matchup spread's okay, but against like really heavy hitting decks, which there are a few of that are very good, it will just not be able to compete at the highest level. That being said, again, it's an okay deck. I wouldn't really. It's probably going to be the bottom of B tier if I had to guess. United Wings, another solid B tier deck. I don't. It's not great. It has some really bad matchups. Like Lost Zone is just awful. And like Chin Pao is not great. Those are the 2 main bad matchups, but it's not even like good against the other matchups. It's like okay, but not great. It's good against Mew, I guess, but most decks are good against Mew. So United Wings is like it's not great, but it has potential, and you can like mix things up a little. Radiant Charizard, even learn Stunfisk if you want. There are a few other interesting techs. Learn Zapdos. I don't know all the techs, but you can do some interesting techs with United Wings, but it's still not the best deck. It's and Zoroark. I don't know. I really like this deck, but it's probably like C tier. It's very inconsistent and it doesn't even hit like it's pretty much just outclassed by most of the top decks right now. At least most like the hard hitting top decks. Reversal Gardevoir. Okay, so this is the build that plays like lots like 4 reversal, plays Luxray. It does play Mewtwo V Union. There's a lot going on, but the deck just really inconsistent during the early game. So it can really like struggle. Late game, it's literally just a late game. Like you can't work before turn 3 with the deck. It barely plays any rare candies. I'd say it's B. I could put it in A. It's like an interesting deck. It's a hard deck to play, but you will always fall behind in the early game. But falling behind in the early game it's not like a good thing. Sure, you have like Iono, which is good, but you can just get rolled over in the early game, especially if your opponent's playing Lost City. That's really bad for you. I think the deck just has a tendency to fizzle out if you're when Curlius Pride. I don't know. It's just so slow. It's like I think it's the slowest deck on this list. It's just not great. Magnezone. I can't believe this is Magnezone EX. This one's not good. It's good against Arceus, and Arceus is good, but it's not that good. I wouldn't really play Magnezone. It's like very match. I'd say it's D. I'd say it's the best D tier deck. It's like super matchup dependent. Things can just go so badly so often. It can beat a few decks, but generally just has bad prize trading and a lot of inconsistencies. Next up is Arceus Vulpix. So the Arceus decks are kind of weird, but this is just Arceus with Alolan Vulpix and maybe like a 1/1 line thrown in, but generally mostly just Alolan Vulpix. It's okay. I'll say this is a first A tier deck. I think it's an okay deck. It doesn't have the potential to be everything because you just don't have a lot of damage output, but you're a decently tanky deck or a defensive deck, I should say. Your HP's not ginormous, but it's decently large with Arceus, and Vulpix is obviously good in a number of matchups, so you can definitely beat a lot of decks, but at the same time, you can't beat everything. Like, so again, it struggles against Gardevoir, I should say. It's not awful against Gardevoir, but you like need it's a stadium-based matchup where you need Path and you need, or more importantly, like Lost City. But even then, you're probably still going to lose because it's just awkward. Yeah, you can definitely beat you might even lose to Lugia as well. Like Lugia's still not great. Even other Arceus decks you could lose to. You'll probably beat Arceus decks, but and you can beat Lost Zone. It's just not the best deck, but I think it's an all right deck. Oinkologne, I don't know. I haven't played Oinkologne ever. I don't know. I don't think this deck's very good. It doesn't have very high damage output. It's not that tanky. I don't think it's very good. It's like it's top of C tier. Like you can play it if you want, but I don't think it's that good. Curum, same boat. This one's like actually the opposite. It has high damage output. It's just so inconsistent. I'll put it in B because it's like if it like rolls high, it just like obliterates everything. I guess it can still lose, but it's high HP, high damage. But at the same time, it's just so inconsistent, and you can just like really lose so much. Except Zorak Box. I'll put Zorak Box in A tier. It definitely can do stuff. I don't think it's winning. It's probably like the bottom A tier. Nah, it's B tier. Zorak Box is you have this versatility where you can change it to all these other stage ones, which is fun and it's good. But it also like it's inconsistent and slow. And you can get unlucky in various ways, bad pricing. It doesn't like beat everything either. You'll like always lose to Lost Zone. You can beat like all other decks, but you're heavily dependent on reversal energy. Matchups just get really weird all the time. And again, also struggles against Chen Pao. It's just bad against spread. In Earthstream Italian, I've been talking about like Lost Zone and Chen Pao as the main spread decks. Earthstream Italian is more of a spread deck than Chen Pao certainly, and sees a much of play. Next up, we have Arceus Gudra. Arceus Gudra is okay. Also, sometimes actually played with Alolan Vulpix. I think it's okay again. It's like an A tier. It's like one of those generic Arceus decks that's pretty good. It's very tanky. But you can just get like cut through with really powerful decks like notably Chen Pao is not going to be good for you. I can't imagine. You do have Path, which is okay, but you're probably losing that matchup. And then to a lesser extent, Gardevoir is also bad, and maybe even some like single strike decks, depending what they play. But you can get cut through, and if your Gudra gets one shot, you just lose. And if your Arceus like gets messed up, even if your Arceus gets one shot, it's still probably not good. But it's an all right deck, and with Vulpix, you can do some stuff, but then you get a bit inconsistent. Arceus Regidraco is going to be B tier. Like middle of B tier, it's not the best deck. It's inconsistent. It has like theoretically a high power ceiling, but a lot of the time it doesn't work super well. Single Strike Lugia, it's a solid deck. It's one of the top decks right now. It's the highest deck we've seen so far. It's certainly all right, but it also like its damage output is good, but it's really inconsistent. It just like it's not the least consistent deck on this list, but of like the viable decks, like I imagine it's going to be the least consistent of the A tier decks. But it can hit hard, but you get pathed at a certain time. You lose if you get, or if you don't have like answers, you get pathed. You lose if you get Tebla Synod. You can just lose stuff like that. So you have outs to those things, but it's not consistent. So Lugia is just not as good as it used to be, which is good. It used to be super broken, but now it's not. Tinglu is, I'll put it A. Let's see, what are the other good decks? Yeah, it's A, I guess. It theoretically has solid matchups against a lot of the field. Obviously, hitting weakness on Arceus is good, and shutting off abilities is also very good. It's a bit inconsistent or like lacking. So there are times when you miss the Tinglu, and if you just like miss the Tinglu and whatever piece you need, especially like Gape Trap Bug is not guaranteed by any means, then you can just lose. And then on the other side of the spectrum, if you don't set up super well, Tinglu will lose, and if both you do set up super well, Tinglu will also lose because your damage output isn't super high, unless you switch to Koraidon, which is a bit higher, but at the same time, you're also going to be allowing your opponent to work way better. So it's an okay deck. Tinglu's certainly all right. It's a deck you should respect and kind of understand. You'll see a deck like say Chen Pao play Canceling Clone, not just for Tinglu, but also from Manaphy. But yeah, it plays it because Tinglu is a problem, and other decks will start playing Canceling Clone as well. I think some Tinglu can beat like a lot of the top decks theoretically, but it doesn't always do it. Yeah, it's kind of iffy, but it's a good deck. I think it's like it's new, so it's less explored, and it was banned for like a while on TCG Live, so you couldn't like mess around with it so much. It used to be like it literally wasn't played at all because you couldn't play it, and then all of a sudden it was played by like everyone. It's right now one of my go-to decks because it's very good, and it's a very good ladder deck as well. Like ladder, it's an S tier deck, but yeah, like I think at Worlds it'll see some play. It's a very solid deck. one of the the decks that people will underhype are the new decks because they're like, oh, well, if we like pretend these decks are bad, then everyone else is gonna think they're bad. But Tinglu's pretty alright, and same thing with Chim Pao. We'll get to that later though. Darkrai, Darkrai is not good though. I'm not. Oops, moved the deck. Darkrai is okay. Certainly, Darkrai is like a viable deck. But I think it's again like outclassed by a lot of the other decks we're gonna look at here. I'll say it's like B. It's certainly all right. It's not one I've like ever ventured into because, as I said, it's like directly outclassed by a number of other decks. So like, why do you play it instead of some of the other energy acceleration based decks that just accelerate more energy and hit harder, or like Arceus or like Lugia? You know, it just kind of works. Next up, we have, Darkrai isn't like bad, but it's just not the best. Snorlax Stall is gonna be an interesting. Yeah, Snorlax Stall is a really interesting deck. I'm just gonna include all like versions of control on here. Because control is just like so weird. It's okay. I honestly don't. I'm not sure how well it is. I think good it is. I think control is good, but it's not. I'm gonna put control Snorlax Stall in A. I'll put it in the bottom of A. Kind of hedging my bets here. It's weird. It's like it's good, but it's hard. It's really hard to play with and play against. It's been to build as well. Like it depends your build. Some builds are very easy to play. Some builds are not easy to play at all. It's of course a very slow deck, but it can be inconsistent at times as well. Control is it's like notorious, like one of those inconsistent decks that you just kind of you can really struggle to hit what you need, especially because you're really looking to play like multiple supporters every turn. But a Snorlax Stall or control or whatever you want to call it is it's okay now. I'd say it's A tier. It's one that's people aren't discussing because they just like don't really care about it, but it's one you need to keep on your radar. I'd say just have like a loose game plan about it and just kind of hope it should be okay. But it's certainly one you need to respect. So Arceus Flying Pikachu is very good. I'm looking at the other decks here. We got let's just talk about the rest of the Arceus decks. Like nah. So this is like the general Arceus deck that has Flying Pikachu. And then maybe like Alolan Vulpix or maybe Espeon, but it doesn't necessarily have, I think this other Arceus is more like Arceus Umbreon with like Flying Pikachu and stuff. So I'd say this is A. I think it's the best deck we've seen so far. It's pretty versatile, good against a number of decks. And Flying Pikachu has a lot of synergy with Arceus in a few ways, like notably a few retreats. Super nice, solid like versatility and stuff. It's really interesting, but yeah, I think it's a good deck. It's a very good deck and one of the best decks right now. Not the best, but up there. And as I said, these decks are going to be a little better as well, I think. I'm going to move Kyurem down, like Kyurem and Kyurem will stay. My tier list is all right. We have other, so this is any deck that's not on the list. I don't know. I should probably just get rid of this. I'm going to move this and write on Regieleki to the top. I think I got all the decks I needed. Others just here because I don't know. It's just how Limitless works. Shadow Rider? Like, who plays Shadow Rider? Shadow Rider is like Darkrai, but worse. Shadow Rider is bad. Like, I'm putting in C. It's not like the worst. It's not unplayable, but it's not good. Palkia, probably with a Gardevoir engine. It's okay. Like, it's outclassed by stuff. It's B. You know, it's all right. Is it the best? No. Would I play it? No, probably not either. But you know, if you see it, you see it. If you play with it, you play with it. It's all right, but I would not say it. I'd say just play something better, right? Its damage output's okay. It's solid. Its consistency is solid. It's actually quite consistent, but its damage output just isn't that high. Just play Arceus, I think. You're hitting less with Arceus, but you're not hitting the numbers you need to be hitting with Palkia anyway. So just play Arceus. Next, we have Dialga Magnezone. This deck's okay, I guess. It's a B. It's so inconsistent. Actually, I'll put it at the bottom of A. It's like very inconsistent, but when it sets up, it can just win. And it's not as inconsistent as some of the other decks. It's something you could see if you're playing Pokemon, and if you're like say playing Worlds, you could see this, but not something that I'd expect to see. But it's certainly a deck that's out there. Arceus, this would probably be like those Arceus Umbreon builds. I believe there's like, excuse me, an Arceus Umbreon deck, but Arceus Umbreon with Flying Pikachu and stuff. This is very good. Honestly, this is like the best deck in the game. Arceus Toolbox, or I'm not sure if it's the best, but it's up there. It's very good, very powerful, versatile. You just need to be aware of what people are going to play. So you need to be able to predict what people are going to play. You need to understand that people are going to play stuff that's not on this list and be able to like adapt to that and stuff like that. It's a very hard deck to play at the highest level, but that's fine. If it's played. I'm not assuming everyone's playing perfectly, but I'm assuming everyone's playing good, close to perfectly, I'll say, for this list. Although most of it holds up if both players are playing like not that well, but yeah, if you're playing Arceus, if both players are playing like amazingly in an Arceus match, I think Arceus is theoretically like one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the game. That means you need to build like the perfect Arceus list, which is very hard to do, but it's very good. Yeah, and you have versatility. You can look at like Armarouge. You can look at I don't know. There are a bunch of different builds of Arceus that are really good and a bit more out there, but they're very solid. Next, we have Miraidon Flaffy. And speaking of very solid, yeah, this deck's like not good. I'll put it in top of C. It's better than Miraidon Regieleki, but it's, it has a Flaffy, so it's weak to those spread decks like Inteleon, Lost Zone, Chi, and Pow. And it has the Miraidons, which they kind of like fizzle out at the end of the game. You got Flaffy, but it's not great. Miraidon's good, and it's better with Flaffy, but it's just not that good. Miraidon's like an okay Pokemon, but like comparing Miraidon to Gardevoir is just drastically better than Miraidon. I mean, Miraidon's best deck is Talga Magnezone, which is kind of sad. Gardevoir Mewtwo. I don't even know exactly what this is because this is Reversal Gardevoir, which also plays Mewtwo, but this deck is a bit more consistent and has more aggressive push. It's solidly in the A tier. I'd say it's a little worse than Tinglu, better than Snorlax. It has potential to be really good. If it pops off, it wins. And if you're going even, you probably win, but it's also kind of inconsistent. Or slow, right? Gardevoir is notorious for being slow. It is of the top 10 most played decks. It's certainly the slowest. And so Gardevoir Mewtwo is slow. It emphasizes the slow aspect, but then when you get your Mewtwo up, you're very good. But when you excite the energy to Mewtwo, you damage it, and then it can die easier. If your Mewtwo Venom gets one shot, you lose. And if a Gardevoir gets one shot, you also probably lose. So you need to keep that in mind. But you can win, right? It's a very strong deck with a lot of potential, but it's not the best deck. Inteleon Urshifu is amazing, right? It's just so good. Theoretically, it's if all the decks, I should say, if all of them are working at their highest, at their best capacity, Inteleon Urshifu probably wins every matchup. It's just, again, one of those very inconsistent decks. There are a few matchups you probably lose, but they're still winnable, I think. But you have weaknesses covered. You have a lot of potential to be single prize decks as well, which are very scary for a lot of multi-prize decks because they can one-shot you. Not that they will beat you, but they can beat you, and it's very very scary dynamic. You don't know who's going to win till the end. Inteleon Urshifu can just wipe those decks out. It beats Lost Zone. Lost Zone's very good right now. It beats Arceus. Usually, an Arceus is very good right now. It struggles. It can beat Gardevoir. It doesn't always beat Gardevoir though, and that's the biggest struggle because Gardevoir has single prizes which you can take out with your Inteleons, but then once they get going, you just lose, and you can't use Urshifu in that matchup really, or else you're probably going to give up 4 prizes with an Urshifu, which they're going to Sky Seal Stone just to one-shot you. Or if they don't play Sky Seal Stone, they'll just one-shot you and take 3 prizes, which is bad. Next up, we have Arceus Duraludon. This deck's good, I guess. It's solid, bottom of the A tier. No, I'll put it top of B. It's really theoretically it can just pop off and win, but it's also very it's better than. I'm gonna move Dialga Magnezone down. Dialga Magnezone is also worse than it. These decks are both those decks are just so inconsistent. Arceus Duraludon has a bit more consistency, but also it doesn't hit that hard, which is kind of problematic. When you're inconsistent and weak, of course you got really tanky Pokemon, and you got some versatility in the late game with Umbreon, but you can get Iona's bad. You can just miss setting up your Duraludon, and your Gardevoir matchup's not great either. Your Lost Zone matchup's only okay. You are looking for your stadium situation's weird because in Lost Zone, if you have Crystal Cave, that's really good and you're in a good spot. And in Gardevoir, if you have Lost City, you're in a very, very good spot. But you can't have both of those. I mean, you could, but if you're splitting them, it's not going to work. You're going to run out. So because both those decks play tons of stadium bumps, especially Lost Zone. So you have to kind of cut corners somewhere, and you will get hurt for it. Or you could play lots of stadiums and then just like be inconsistent. So yeah, Arceus Duraludon definitely can fall. Like it's one deck that I see hyped a lot by some people. Some people say it's like awful. I'm in the boat that it's not that good. I mean, it's okay. I wouldn't say like you can't play it. And if you think it's good, you play it. But it just doesn't set up sometimes. Lost Zone Charter. This might be the deck that I'm most unsure of. To me, it's like theoretically good, but also kind of awkward. I think if you're playing Lost Zone Charizard, you should play Mimikyu in it. The Mimikyu that is immune to V's and EXs, it's very good. I don't know why people don't always play it in it. It helps a lot of matchups. But that being said, you don't have the powerful spread options. You do have Sableye, which is good, but it's not Radiant Greninja, right? It doesn't do as much damage, and it doesn't like obliterate your opponent's board position all the time. It's also slow to set up. So like Lost Zone Charizard is good. It doesn't like fully utilize the Lost Zone package as well, but it has like the best single person in the game, right? You got Charizard. You might also have Glaring Moltres. You have Sableye. You have Cramorant. You have other stuff. I don't even know what you have, but I mean, yeah, I have an idea, but I don't know exactly what all the lists are playing. But they can bring out some spice. Like Lost Zone Charizard, you don't know exactly what you're going to play if you're doing this, so you can surprise people as well. Something like Intelligent Urshifu, you're not going to surprise your opponent because like it's pretty much the same exact 60 cards every time. I'd say like minus like a few cards, it's generally very similar. But Lost Zone Charizard, it's different. I'm going to put it upper A tier. I don't think it's good. No, I'll put it above Lugia. Lugia's whatever. Yeah, it's quite good now. So Fusion Mew is good. It's very powerful. It does what Miraidon Regieleki wants to do, but it actually does it. So that's nice. It's very powerful, but it's also very vulnerable. So UV Max can win, but it also can lose in spectacular fashion. If your opponent's playing Drapion, you probably lose. Not as much with Fusion Mew, but or more so with not as much with Fusion Mew. It depends exactly what you're playing with the Drapion deck, though. You can path you, but that's very sketchy anyways. And Fusion Mew is the best way to play Mew versus like the other way, which isn't awful, but it's not as good. I say Fusion Mew is like A tier. I'd say somewhere here, like middle A tier. It's definitely a very solid contender for one of the better decks right now, but it's not the best either, right? It's good, but it's not the best. Speaking of the best, though, we got Chen Pao, right? Chen Pao is just so good right now. It's the one deck that you see a lot of content creators say, oh, Chen Pao is not that good. Well, they're probably lying. I don't want to call people out, but when YouTubers say, yo, Chen Pao is not that good, they're probably lying. If they're going to like the World Championships, they're probably lying because they like that's a deck that very few people have played before in like major tournaments, in like in-person tournaments I should say, and even on like online tournaments. It's not played as much because it's newer, and like Gardevoir has been played for twice as long as Chen Pao. So there's twice as many lists out there. Chen Pao, people are like hiding Chen Pao. It's blatantly very like you accelerate all this energy, you do big damage, you spread. And on top of that, it's decently, it's not like the most consistent deck in the game, but it's pretty consistent. For what it's doing, which is one-shotting every Pokemon in the game and beating all single prize decks, which like on paper, if it sets up perfectly, it beats everything, right? And it doesn't beat everything because it doesn't always set up right, but if you set up like 70% of the time, you win 70% of the time. So yeah, Chen Pao is certainly one of the best decks. It's easily S tier. There are a few other. S tier isn't like undisputed PDIF, but it's like one of the best decks right now. Next we have Goodra Lost Zone. I think Goodra Lost Zone's a very good deck, but also like it's kind of inconsistent and it doesn't always work out super well. I don't know. This one's weird. I don't think it's the best way to play Goodra. Like it might be the best way to play Goodra, but it's not the best way to play Lost Zone. I personally wouldn't play this deck. It's kind of outclassed by his stuff, but it's an interesting deck, you know. It just kind of like fades into the background when looked at compared to some of the other top decks, notably the other Lost Zone decks. Arceus Giratina is very good. I'd say it's top of A tier. It's really the deck that I have not sunk my teeth into, and I'm tempted to say it's S tier, but I think it's fallen off a little. I would have easily before said it was S tier, because it just has so much power and like consistency. But then things can also go wrong, and you don't like one shot everything, so you can definitely lose games. It's A tier. It's very good. It's top of A. It's consistent. Urshifu Inteleon is not consistent. So there's a reason it's not like the best deck in the game. Arceus Giratina is consistent, but like on paper, if every deck's working perfectly, it doesn't beat stuff because it's a bit. I don't know if I'd say slow. Like Arceus, you can't like be one shotting like V's early, or like V Max or V stars, so or EXs as well. But certainly late game you can. But you don't always, right? Your opponent can be playing Drowdon, you can't one shot that. So you just need to kind of like do your best. It's also very like easy to play deck, which means that if you're like bad, it's great because if two bad players are playing it, the player with the easier deck is probably going to win, assuming that they're relatively similar power levels. But then if the players playing, they're two good players and playing harder decks, or one player's playing an easy deck, one player's playing a harder deck, the player playing the harder deck will probably win. Because you have the potential to pass your opponent. Arceus Giratina, you can, like, I could probably play it to pretty much the best it can be played because it's not maybe card perfect, but pretty close. And I mean, I'm a pretty good player, certainly. But even I imagine, like, pretty much everyone watching this video could play it almost perfectly because it's way easier compared to, like, Chen Pao. Chen Pao's not that hard. Like, Inteleon Urshifu, that can be a hard deck to play. Or especially like Lost Zone. Like Lost Zone's so hard to play. Probably like no one watching this video, certainly not me, can like play this deck perfectly. Like Lost Zone Charizard, that's super hard to play. Arceus Giratina, when you make like 10 decisions throughout the course of the game, yeah, that's pretty easy to play. I'm not insulting any of the viewers. Certainly you are all, you're not all very good players, but some of you are definitely very strong players. And hopefully that's why you're watching this video. And then we see Mew Genesect. Mew Genesect's not as good as Fusion Mew, but I'll put it B, I guess. I mean, I like it. It's maybe belongs in A tier, but like also it feels kind of silly putting it in like the same tier as Fusion Mew when like you should. There's not really any reason to play it over Fusion Mew. Pathing yourself as Mew is just not good. I mean, it can help in certain matchups, but it really just grinds the game to a halt and doesn't make it like you're just not going to be able to do anything. And nor can your opponent. You're hoping that you are able to play out of it better, but it's a struggle. The best part of the Mew Genesect deck is Genesect, right? Genesect's just super broken. And when you when you hinder yourself with Path, it doesn't work. You can maybe play one Path, but probably don't. And then when you're losing the Meloetta is the second best part of Mew. Mew VMAX is the third best part of its own deck. So Meloetta, at least the Sparkle stuff, is just so good. Also, Fusion Mew is better against Ting-Lu. Ting-Lu is definitely a deck you need to respect. Regular Mew is okay because you have Path, but both of them are probably actually good against Ting-Lu. That's kind of a silly thing to say, but this deck just doesn't always work super well, and Path isn't even as like that good right now. Arceus can get Path once in the game, and then the rest of the game it doesn't matter unless you're playing Umbreon. Chen Pao, you can't Chen Pao and Radiant Greninja, but you can still Excalibur and one-shot your opponent's VMAX. So, Lost Zone, it doesn't matter, at all. It doesn't beat all the decks, unfortunately. Or fortunately, it's a pretty boring deck, too, as well. Giratina Lost Box is top of A as well. It's a very good deck. Hits hard. It's tanky as well. This is why Gudra Lost Box isn't as good, because Giratina is also tanky, and you don't need to be, and it does lots of damage, and you can literally one-shot anything. You go just have an attack once per game where you just, obliterate something. Giratina is very good. That being said, it can be a little slow or inconsistent at times, and it's weird. There are times you just, against Urshifu Inteleon, you probably lose. Against Chimpao Excalibur, you could also lose if your bench gets messed up. Chimpao Excalibur versus Lost Zone is so weird because it's both players just trying to get at each other's benches. The Chimpao can do that. Can do that better, I should say, because they have Canceling Clone. But it's weird. Giratina Lost Zone is still very good. It's one of the best decks. I wouldn't say it's S tier, but it's very close. Lugia Arcaps is colorless. This deck's not good. It's top of B. I'd say it's here. It hard hits. It doesn't hit that hard, which is problematic. It sets. It's also kind of inconsistent. It's the problems of the Arceus Drowdon, except just worse. It's more consistent than Arceus Drowdon, but And you can hit hard, you can like one-shot stuff, but generally there's stuff actually coming in like a new set in Obsidian Flame, so it'll make it better, actually drastically better. But Lugia Archeops just isn't gonna quite cut it, unfortunately. Next up, we have Gardevoir. Gardevoir is very good. It's the top of A. I mean, it's somewhere near the top of A, certainly. I'd say it's worse than. I'd say it's second deck in A tier. It's very good. It has a lot of power. Notably, it's really slow, which is definitely holding it back, I guess. But it's like its late game is the best in the game. You got a number of very powerful bench Pokemon that just draw cards, dish out supporters, whatever. And you have this powerful recovery / acceleration tool in Gardevoir EX itself. And you have powerful attackers, single prize Gardevoir, as well as Zacian V, and even something like Cresselia. That being said, like your Lawson matchup still isn't that good. Your Chin Pao matchup still isn't that good. So you need to be able to recover in the late game. That's Gardevoir admittedly is a deck that I'm not a big fan of because you're down, you're losing every game. Not as much as the Gardevoir or as the Mewtwo builds, but you're certainly falling behind some, and pretty consistently you're going to be falling behind. And just quite simply, there are times when you just can't come back. When you choose to fall behind every game, you're just gonna not be able to come back a bunch of the time. I've said like some like things that like I don't think Gardevoir's that good. I mean, it's very good. Gardevoir is a very good deck. I think it's top 5. It's gonna be top 5 because there's only one deck left and it's top 4. So it's very good. But it's not the best deck, but it's so good. Right? You just have the potential to come back from almost anything. But then there are games we just won't set up also, so you need to keep that in mind. But it's a very strong deck. Definitely the best line, like evolution line in the game, because you just got so much beef there. But you can get just fall behind. Also, Lost City. Lost City is really bad for Gardevoir, as you can lose like your whole deck in a few attacks. So that's bad. And last, and I guess best is Lost Zone. Lost Zone's definitely the best. As I said, these other ones aren't decks, really. So, because we already did Miraidon and Regieleki. So Lost Zone box with like Radiant Greninja is so good. You could put Vs. I wish people would distinguish between if you're playing Vs or if you're not playing Vs. I don't know if it matters, though. Like, you literally just go Sableye, Radiant Greninja most of the time, and then you just like you'll beat any deck that plays like any single prize who's doing that, which is like Gardevoir, Qian Pao. You probably beat other Lost Zone decks as well. Obviously, if you're both playing Lost Zone, then it depends, but you'll beat so many decks from that. And then you also have, if you're against like big Pokemon, this can be kind of scary. Like against Arceus, Drowdon, you're struggling, but then you just like stick in like Zapdos, and you're like, boom, Arceus is like dead. So it doesn't matter that much, anyways. Yeah, Urshifu and Talion's a really bad matchup. That's like one of the worst matchups in the game, probably. But aside from that, you pretty much beat everything. And you can beat Urshifu and Talion, but probably not. But yeah, it's just so insanely good. You have the ability to just completely obliterate your opponents in ways that like just can't prepare for it. Like, there's so many different ways you do very solid damage and very consistent damage, and then you also have spread, and you come at them from all these different angles, and they can't deal with it. Yeah, Lost Zone's just so insanely good right now. It's been broken since it came out. What can I say? But I hope you enjoyed this video. As I said, I wanted to just inform you because some YouTubers aren't. Unfortunately, when World comes around, they're just like not as transparent as they normally are, which is a bit unfortunate. Not that they're bad, but I get why they do it, but it's still annoying. So I figured I should make my own tier list. I usually don't do like competitive tier list, but if you go to a tournament, like watch out. Watch out for any of these decks in S and A, certainly, and probably play from S and A. You can literally play from anything, but like there are definitely decks on this list that people aren't playing right now that they've cooked up that are super good. There are some there's just some very good cards in the game right now that aren't seeing play. But if I haven't built those decks, right? But I'm sure there are great decks out there. Yeah, and I hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'm excited to see you next time. Also, if you think I misplaced anything, please tell me. But I believe I did it all pretty accurately. As always, I'm excited to see you next time.